And I see the recording has started. Great. And the chat is also open if anybody wishes to put anything in there. I know we have a few minutes, but as this is a rolling discussion, I'm perfectly happy with starting and then coming back to points if we need to, or just allow people to, when they pop in, add in their own thoughts. I don't necessarily have I don't have an agenda on this one. I don't have necessarily a list of orders. There's a number of different things that I did want to bring up and see if we were starting to think about. I was not in the Marshallate meeting this morning. And so I don't know if you all talked about things like authorizations and so forth. So
we did. Yep.
I'm curious as to how that's going to happen, because I have to figure that most people's authorizations will have expired. And I'm also going to figure that a lot of people will not have pulled their gear out in a year. I'd like to think otherwise, but let's be real.
That was discussed and it was recorded. So there'll be, but that was the Marshallate's plan in general is they're basically starting some new things since they can start almost from scratch.
Okay.
With a green card, starting from scratch with brand new authorizing marshals and basically a database that keeps track of authorized fighters and who authorized them.
And the card won't be green anymore; it'll be pink.
It'll be pink.
It'll be pink, of course.
Yeah, so you can easily determine if you're on the new system or not, basically.
Yes.
Yep. I just while we were having lunch break, I got out all my green cards and threw them away. So.
So do you think this new system would be then accessible to the list people?
That is what they are planning on doing, and that website is, according to Sir Adrian, should go live in January.
Okay.
And but yeah, the purpose is you have a list. So if someone shows up with a pink card and they're not on the list, well then they're not authorized. The list is what's going to be the master thing.
Let's go important. I gotta think at first, if you show up with a pink card, yeah, that's gonna be good at first for the first year or so.
Yeah, and there'll be a kind of a transition time of about 3 months when you're supposed to get reauthorized. If your card hasn't expired yet, there'll be an email link coming out soon that will you just email them a picture of your card back and front, and you don't have to get pre-authorized. They'll just authorize you under the new system. But if it has expired before the lockdown, then you have to get reauthorized.
And so I know one of the things that'll come up then is if we're still planning Battlemore right now, about a month after reopen. That's not going to give a ton of time to get those reauthorizations in, unless there's going to be mass reauth at Battlemore, and maybe that's
so they're going to do a 3-month grace period after the reopening, from the sounds of it, until we can get things caught up. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Show up at Battlemore with your gear. We'll make sure you fight.
Okay.
Right. I mean, right. No, sorry, Jethro. Your card's expired. You drove all the way to Battlemore for nothing.
Well, my gear's probably turned to crap too, because I've not been in a sweaty fighter bag for a year. So
yeah.
So up to send the reminder.
You can actually clean that stuff and air it out. You can do that.
How's that possible? I don't understand.
It's in a bag. It's not possible.
It's in a bag.
There's a reason Baku has a separate net bag that he puts his dirty, gross gambesson and stuff in, and then it goes over by the laundry machine when we come home from an event. It's a thing. It works really nice.
Okay, so it sounds like the marshal has talked about a lot of those kinds of issues. I know a lot of people are concerned about recruitment and retention, and I don't know if, I'd be interested in anyone's thoughts on how we might, make sure we continue on the retention, our recruitment. I assuming that's just that will have suffered. And anyone that might have been in the pipeline, maybe we can get back in contact with them. I don't know. I mean, lots of things have obviously will have happened over the year.
But
Oh yeah, Fontaine. I know specifically our numbers have dropped to like 35. We were at like I want to say like 70, and now we're at like 35, which is obviously a little concerning for us, for Seneschal and so forth. So
Yeah,
we're really interested in trying to figure out a way to get people interested right now.
As a note,
Right.
it was mentioned in the Seneschal meeting, it doesn't matter what your numbers are for a little while regarding status of your group.
Good.
So
It's good to
you're
hear.
not going to lose your baronial status because you fall below the magic number.
Okay, good.
Officers still need to maintain some kind of membership to be an officer. And there's wide expectations that other people will not renew until June, give or take. But then there's, like I said, there's the matter of when we start coming back, how do we make sure that people are coming back? A lot of people, and Alberon, I got to think that weekly practice, people got used to it. And now they got to remember how that works.
I think we're all going to be in the same boat.
I think so. I'm, like I said, part of this was to see if there's ideas out there as to how to get people back in and renew some of that spirit that might have dissipated. In addition to, some of these other, COVID safety, which we'll get to in a little bit too.
well, yeah, because access to the vaccine is going to be staggered. So how do we keep people safe? Because potentially with the vaccine still, you can still pass it until enough people get the vaccine. So we still have to be careful about that.
So
I think something that we should all look at seriously, and my Seneschal is in this meeting and she hasn't heard this yet, but I think site fees for events are going to practically go out the door for a while. Like we've got money in the bank. We've got enough money in the bank to throw some events and not charge people to come to them. People are hurting. People are out of work, whatever's going on. To me, an attitude of we're having a party, welcome back everybody, come on down, have some pizza and donuts or whatever.
So
I'm not
taking
sure
the larger, taking a larger
sorry.
view, if I might, Baron Tigger, for Arkel, Character, Alberon, yeah, that's quite possible.
Yeah.
There are those groups out there, their auctions are barely covering their expenses. They've tried to hold some auctions or something. They're not covering expenses as it is. So, and I love the idea. If we could get some site fees to disappear, at least knock them down a bit. So, okay, you're covering expenses, but you're not making the profit. I think that's an encouragement to try and bring people back. Again, some people, they still have you go 2 years without your prime event. If your big money making event was April, you will have had 2 years without your money making event. And so, next April comes around, or even before that, you want to hold an event to try and get some money.
Do we know how the vaccine rollout's going to affect insurance? Because I see insurance companies, especially for venues, maybe requiring, so they can get more people into a location, requiring a vaccine. I definitely see concerts going that route too.
Proof of vaccine has been mentioned. I don't know how far that will really go. It was more a passing idea when last I heard it. That does not mean that the passing idea won't become reality. And how you're going to do that, I don't know. Or, at some of those camping events, yeah, we can have 500 people, but any one section might be stuck with 50 or 25 or whatever. I don't know what those numbers will be.
Depending on how they roll that out, you can't even be sure that any kind of like piece of paper documentation would be valid because it can easily be reproduced and sent out. So they could be fraudulent.
God, I would hope that people are not using a fraudulent thing to attend an SCA event. I don't put it past them. But I mean, you want to use your fraudulent thing to, I don't know, get your job or something. Okay, I can start working with you on that. To attend an SCA event, okay. But you're right, something like that's possible. So I don't know if we want to start how we're going to enforce that, or if we're still have to do temperature checks. We'd have to have some kind of training and people set up for that. So I mean, there's a lot of what ifs on how to handle the COVID.
Well, there's a long time between now and the 1st of June too. So.
Yeah.
Yes. And we'll have more information then. We'll know how well the rollout is. And quite frankly, it's possible that this rollout goes really smoothly. We start before June, or it goes really poorly and we're not starting until September or later.
Yep.
Well, I know at least Albuquerque or Alberon, they are one of the pilot for the Pfizer one, which was just approved like yesterday. So that will be rolling out like starting this week.
Yeah, I saw that Colorado is going to be getting some number for people dealing with COVID patients, so healthcare professionals dealing with COVID patients, and people in nursing homes and other group homes.
Yeah.
And other first responders are down. They're going to be in the second phase. They're down the list a little bit. And when someone like me who works from home and has little interaction when he doesn't need to, I'm way down the list. So
Not even sure if I'll get on any list.
yeah, so some of those things, and we can speculate a lot. I think it's some good ideas to keep swirling around. Are we going to have some kind of insurance proof? What is insurance going to, or proof of vaccine? We're going to have some kind of insurance proof. Are we going to have to change numbers and have some kind of limit still on how many people we have? I think there's a lot of questions out there that, as Tigger said, we'll know closer to June. I mean, I'm open to other thoughts on that.
But,
I just don't know how much we can speculate. I mean, anyone else have comment on COVID? And for those who are just joining, we're trying to keep this a pretty wide open discussion on various issues related to restarting. There's not a particular agenda. I have some items I want to bring up. We did talk a little bit about the marshals seem to have talked a lot about these things. So we did a brief overview at the beginning, and then we have moved on to some other things. Right now we're talking about things we might have to face once the vaccine is mostly rolled out, whenever that ends up being. But are we still going to face insurance issues or maximum number of attendees and so forth? We don't know.
And I think it'll also vary from state to state in our kingdom. That's will be really interesting to see how that plays out. Here in New Mexico, at least like right now, if we're supposed to have a 2-week quarantine if we leave the state, come back.
yes.
So people from, so present some other challenges. I don't know.
Well, that certainly is a huge challenge. I mean, for something like, say, Battlemore, if there's still a quarantine period, I got to think that there's going to be a number of people in New Mexico who are going to say no.
Yeah.
Man, that breaks my heart, but that's probably true. Because now you're taking 3 weeks off for an event instead of 1 week or whatever,
Right. I mean, we could have restarted. There still could be some kind of, if you go to Colorado, sorry, you got to take a quarantine when you come back.
Well, like Tigger says, there's a lot of time between now and then, so hopefully that won't be the case. Right now, It's the case.
So right now, there still is, going back to the retention and recruitment, as Master Angus noted, numbers have ticked down. Now, whether that's real I mean, obviously it's real that the numbers have ticked down, but it just might be people not renewing because nothing's happening.
Yeah, we have a lot of that here in Arkell. Most of our stick jockeys, our fighter practice guys, that they're absolutely here every week for fighter practice. But since there's nothing going on, they're all taking a time out on their membership. So,
and I fully expect that.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be obviously people who said, wow, now that I'm not attending fighter practice every week, those pains are gone. And Tigger knows what I'm talking about. I've said that too. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to want to go back because I don't have those pains now. I wake up and it doesn't hurt.
Everyone, all the fighters finally got a nice rest period, so they'll be raring to go.
There's that too. And we talk about people who've left because I've certainly seen on Facebook, I'm done with the SCA because you're a jerk or whatever it is. But I like to think that there's also some people go, now that I was quarantined, I started doing my leather work again, which I haven't touched in 10 years. And I'm going to come back to the SCA. I left 10 years ago. And I don't know how many people that is, how many people there are like that, but I hope there's some. And maybe it's a time, have people start to reach out to members who drifted away. I mean, that's a big thing in character. We've got so many peers who haven't paid membership in years. But we haven't reached out to them either.
As we were discussing with the Seneschal meeting this morning, there's probably a lot of paperwork that we need to get in order and have ready. Whether it's background checks or waivers and that type of stuff. And I think this would be a good time to get it ready so that when we do open back up, we've got everything in line and ready to go.
And what are some of those paperwork that people, I know that the Seneschal's meeting had some, and I missed that portion of it. But are there certain ones that people are thinking of that we should definitely be on track of? Or is it time that we could take a time and institute that database, that fighter database that we've talked about for years, but it's an opportunity to institute anything else we've talked about for years and never gotten around to.
Specifically, we were talking about background checks because there's only apparently 25 in the entire kingdom that have them at the moment.
Hey, that's up from Battlemore. There were like 10 at Battlemore, but only 2 on site, and I was one of them.
And we also talked about going through the boxes and boxes of files that some baronies or shires have that need to be sorted through and either scanned in and sent off to the appropriate person, like waivers, or whether it's just a case of we've had this contract from so-and-so and we had this event back, 15 years ago. Do we really need to keep this type stuff? And I think it would probably be a good time to make sure that when we do open up, we have our ducks in a row. We know what things need to get done and have a better way to handle some of them. And that's the general gist of what we've been discussing.
I think Jethro and I both have some idea about the volume of past paperwork that exists for the Barony of Cairta.
Stuff from 1972 is so much fun to read. Those Seneschal reports from 72, are they entertaining?
So I mentioned actually scanning those in to keep as a digital file, so they're not sitting around in a box anymore, and then maybe you can share them. So actually, on a note, for some of Cairta's, a number of years ago, we scanned in a box or two, and I think I still have the digital files on them, but it was a matter of where do we put them, and it got lost on a website or this or that, but I still have some of those files, but we need to do more of that and probably toss some of that stuff because as Una pointed out, I don't really care about a contract from 15, 20 years ago unless someone ran off with the money and we're still suing them.
So we did have a discussion during that Seneschal meeting this morning talking about what the SCA standards are for disposal of that kind of paperwork. And we are actually not required, or are we supposed to be storing that information unless it has historical value past 7 years ago?
Yeah, the gist I got was that if it's 7 years old and it's not wonderful tales of woe or conquest, it can pretty much go away.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So while we're brainstorming, what are some other things some other paperwork that we could be going through and getting in order, or long lost databases that we can finally set up? Like out in Dracamore, is there anything that can be done out there, Ian?
I don't think we have anything.
So another thing that was kind of discussed was might apply more to martial activities than not, but some PSAs put out right before things start to reopen up, especially for fighter practices. Tell your fighters who have been working out, they don't have to prove to anyone that they've been working out and clobber them. The fighters that haven't been able to work out, they don't have to, overdo it and potentially injure themselves or others. That, just remind everyone that we're still friends, and we still have jobs to go back to and stuff, and just ease back into it. It'll be something that'll be important to address, for the population.
So yeah, definitely there's the ease back into it. There's the actually check your gear that you haven't looked at in a year. There's the reminder of what to take camping.
Yeah.
I mean, to lose a whole season and then some, you might forget some of the more basic necessities.
Sometimes rodents like leather and, the other stuff made from cows.
Yep.
So I bought a brand new trailer and brought it home and loaded all of my camping gear in it and got everything, put up shelves in it, and everything is good to go. And I did all of that on March 20th.
Oh,
I know that feeling. I know what you're talking about, man.
So I have this brand new trailer out there with just ready to go, and there it sits.
And I had a lot of armor upgrades that was supposed to be for the crown that never happened.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I just finished tuning all my armor. I renewed my membership so I could make sure I was good for the whole reign. And yeah. Still good.
You're right.
Still a member. So there's also a question on someone that brought up in something. Are there going to be certain reporting requirements? I think that's relating to COVID, and that's, as we mentioned, we'll know more as we get closer. And speculating too much now, I think March is a good time to touch base again and figure some of that stuff out.
We might have to keep track of it for if someone does come down sick, then we'll end up being part of that chain of figuring out where it all came from.
Yes.
Or passing
Christine
it,
was talking about contact tracing
Yeah.
during the Q&A that we just had.
Okay.
so that would require recording phone numbers of people that are on site.
Yes.
Which may end up being something you do when you check in, sign the waiver, sign the horse waivers, put in your phone number for contact tracing. Other things to think about. Like I said, if anyone has some ideas on some other paperwork or PSAs we might want to prep, because that kind of stuff we can certainly prep now. We know what's going to happen.
And with recruitment, if you have practices or some mini gathering once things are open, make it in a visible public area. Remind people that, hey, SCA exists, both new and old. Don't have a secluded fighter practice in a park that there's no foot traffic or drive-by traffic. maybe consider a little bit of advertising.
One of the things that we did in February was we got several stand-up signs that advertise that this is a fighter practice, this is part of the Society for Creative Anachronism, this is the local group, we're Dracamore, and I believe it has a URL on it. I say believe because we got them in February and had exactly no chances to use them before everything shut down.
Albron has that, but if you get a newer sign, not just a URL, but get it that URL put in a I'm blanking on the word. Barcode.
A QR code.
Yeah,
Yeah.
QR code.
Good idea.
So people with their smartphones can go to the site instead of trying to remember it later.
Yeah, I remember something about, working on making like new signs to set out at the Montgomery Park pre-COVID.
We have them,
Oh, okay.
and we were using them for like 2-3 weeks before the lockdown.
So yeah, I mean, it's an
I
opportunity
think
for
I
new
saw
signs.
Alberon's sign actually at the war practice in December. I could be wrong, but I thought I saw one.
It's possible. I just know for sure that when Jose, Lord Jose, started carrying them and putting them out as Chatelaine. So
It's an opportunity to finish any thrones you never finished building beforehand and that you talked about for years. Sorry, that might be character specific. My bad.
Not character specific.
Oh, well, see, there you go. Arkel could, work on those thrones too.
You know, every time Bella's king, he reminds all of the baronies that the crowns would very much appreciate it if there was a set of kingdom thrones that lived in every barony so that they wouldn't have to load them and unload them. And all I can think of is we're new. We barely have our own thrones, you know.
But you have all this time now.
Yeah, I know. And not going out to eat and eating your own cooking is supposed to make you less fat too. And we proved that wrong.
Yeah. All right, so Mistress Catriona, you haven't piped in on anything. Do you have any thoughts to add?
Well, I just put a note in the chat box. I'm not getting any more time for sewing than I was before this mess. And I have been eating my own cooking and I've lost weight.
I've lost 60 pounds.
Fine.
I haven't lost weight, but I'm saving a lot of money. So, there's good and bad.
But the money I'm saving on going out, I'm spending on having Christmas presents ordered and delivered since I won't be seeing everybody at Midwinter.
Yep. I was telling my wife and daughter and friends and family, I usually do all of the Christmas shopping for them in the summer when I go to Lily's and all of these things, Battlemore, right? I buy all of this stuff and then squirrel it away for Christmas time. And this year I got everybody's getting Amazon cards,
Hey, speaking of you, remind me of something. As we get closer, we might want to start putting out the surveys to see who's going to be going to what. Because you mentioned Lily's, and we had talked about how Battlemore might be the first big gathering event, but Lily's is scheduled to be before it. Maybe Uprising. I don't know what the hell's happening with Uprising these days. No, Uprising's not happening.
Uprising's had a bad string of years. So there was the year it was against 50th year celebration. So attendance went down. And then it was against Artemisia's 20th year celebration and attendance went down. And now something like this, I don't know if it's been the death knell of Uprising, but Uprising as a major camping event, it has not been a major camping event for 4 or 5 years running now. This might have been the death knell. So yeah, Lily's, and then perhaps Battlemore.
So it might be interesting to find out the interest that when people are talking about going to Lily's, if Lily's happens, because that's gonna be really close to the startup time. Battlemore has a few extra weeks,
And Penzic a few more after that.
and Penzic a few more after that, which has a whole bunch of extra coordination
Yep.
with it and a whole lot more attention, yada yada. That's a different beast.
Yeah, because Penzic, the organization for that starts the year prior, a little bit more than the year prior.
Yeah.
If we know we can reopen in 2021, first Penzic might be in 2022. I don't know. I don't know what contingency plans they have in place.
I don't know.
They were working on a whole bunch right up until they canceled it in summer. I believe they canceled in the summertime. So they were pretty
I
late.
think the Baron Devon had said something about the fact that currently he and the Coopers are they're planning like it will happen. So planning is going on apace as if it were going to happen. We're just not sure if it will. But they're expecting to at least have their ducks in a row and all the vendors in place that they need to have.
And of course, they're going to run into that question that we were talking about earlier, or at least for Battlemore. Are we going to have a very small attendance or an extremely large attendance because it's the first one? Or is it going to be canceled? Got a plan for all those.
So I sit on the BAM, and we are actively planning Battlemore, and we are actively planning for it to be a really big party that everybody is glad to be back, first big event back to the SCA. And along the lines of site fees, we are planning on doing as much as possible to relieve the distress of the site fee for this year's Battlemore. So
I'm guessing
none of that is official. I'm swearing you all to silence. Only tell people in the SCA.
And I'm guessing it won't be free.
We were talking about that.
Okay.
Like, we're talking about everything from free to brass bowl to $10, $15, $20. We're looking at all the options. So.
Okay. As we get closer, we'll know more.
Yeah.
Hey, Tigger, I know the question that I get asked a lot about Battlemore is what does the year off do to our contract with the site?
So Lavin does all of the interfacing with the site owner, and that's not a question that we have an answer to yet. So I don't know. While we're on the subject, while we were chatting about lilies here, I just messaged a friend of mine over there, and they have no news on lilies yet. So
not too surprising on that they don't know yet. But you mentioned sites there, Ian, and that does bring up the thing that we also should keep in mind about what sites will be available to us, and what ones have we used for years that we won't, or that reservations, we have to remember to redo our reservations. I mean, we talked about canceling various fighter practice site reservations, particularly in the north where that's a much bigger problem. When do we have to start talking to those people again? What will they want?
I know here in Dracomore, we had already lost our indoor winter site because they had some weird, because it was a Gunnison district school, they had some weird insurance issues that they wanted us to be able to prove we had insurance for. And it was something where the coverage sheet, that we give out to people that shows what the SCA insurance is, didn't seem like it was enough. But so we haven't had that site for a while. We were looking back into it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I can't use it because it's a school space and we can't risk infecting anyone. But yeah, it's a good question to find out what we're going to need for that moving forward.
Well, and something else to keep in mind is that there's a number of groups out there who might have had, regular Wednesday meeting at some site, and they won't be coming back. And if you want that Wednesday site, you know, it might be an opportunity to get those places. So I think I've mentioned a lot of things that had crossed my mind. Again, this was meant to be a wide-ranging discussion, a way to brainstorm and come up with various things. So not necessarily focused on this is exactly what we need to do, but trying to get different ideas on what people were thinking. So please toss them out. Otherwise, we might end early, and that's okay too.
From a safety standpoint, initially when we reopen, outdoor sites will probably be considered safer than indoor sites. Fortunately, since we're potentially looking at reopening in summer, that's an option. If it was winter, that's outdoors is not an option unless we're doing Viking Winter Wonderland.
No Viking Winter Wonderland this year, unless we hold it in June.
Well, I mean, there's the other. Remember, Estrella's getting moved to November. I don't know what date in November. And we'll want to try and pump people for that. And frankly, you probably have to start inspiring people before June.
So
it won't rain.
Right. Yes, there is that.
It'd be funny though if it turned out that Estrella was way nicer in the fall.
Move it there permanently.
Right. So the SCA, the BOD, has said no events until the end of May, but the Crown still has the ability to grant us we can go back to having fighter practices or ANS nights and things like that at the Crown's discretion at any time. So if things start looking good, right? If the vaccine rollout looks great, the numbers start dropping off and things like that, we might get back to having fighter practice, guild meetings, stuff like that sooner. So that's what I'm not so secretly hoping for.
I think a lot of us are hoping for that, but again, that will bring up the interesting question. Hey, we want to have a fighter practice, say March. It's still kind of an indoor thing at that point. Up here.
Yeah, we fight in the park on Sunday. Sundays at 11 a.m. And Pueblo's weather's a little different from Denver's.
Right. And we tend to be a middle of the week kind of fighter practice. So
yeah, we're usually a weekend also. It is entirely possible if we get reasonable weather, but the snow is still heavy. There is a covered band shell in the park in the middle of Carbondale that we can get to. That would be big enough for a couple of people to fence in. I had been considering looking into that for getting permission from the town for that. It may be something I need to go back and revisit, but certainly we shut all of that plan down when everything became, no, please don't go anywhere.
Right. So what are some of the signs people might look for when they feel wanting to open up the fighter practice? Obviously, it will have to come from the Crown. The Crown will have to permit it. But they're still at the local level saying, okay, the Crown's permitted. Does that mean, oh, now they've said it, boom, let's do it? Or is there
right now, it's the Crown is waiting for, the Crown is not saying anything unless Kerta goes to them and asks, hey, the numbers are really low in Kerta and we have a plan for how to do this safely. What do you guys think? And the King and Queen will send you back an answer. I know this because I've submitted to them twice to try and get fighter practice going back here in Pueblo. And both times they have said no, and both times they were acting on some wisdom that I am not aware of because it was a good thing they didn't let us come back. So.
Well, within the larger context, modern law does trump SCA policy. The Crown can't approve any more than local public health orders are allowing. This is a discussion from a different room earlier in the day. Currently in New Mexico, gatherings are limited to 5 people or less. And my understanding from somebody who piped in from Colorado's on a county by county basis.
Well, New Mexico's on a county by county reopening plan too now.
Right. Has anybody made it, anybody besides San Miguel County made it from red status to yellow status?
I don't think so.
So yeah, functionally we're on 5 or less.
But
Functionally.
But it can change.
It can. It can every 2 weeks, theoretically.
See, here in Colorado, we'll do anything to avoid going back into lockdown, including changing the scale.
Yeah, don't worry. After if we move to purple, there's actually going to be a new black level.
Right, and then what comes after that?
Paisley.
Night black.
Infrared.
Use.
Yeah,
You start going to patterns.
that's right. So
That
Plaid.
freezing
I don't
color.
want to know what Ver level looks like. I really don't.
Yeah, we'll be in code Paisley next week.
That's not heraldic.
Checky, just Checky. We're hoping to get to Checky soon.
Oaten tea.
Yeah,
Gearney?
but going back a little bit, what would be some of the signs that people would look for to wanting to move? I mean, so Tigger, you've already tried doing this. What were some things over the summer? Things started to look better. I'm assuming that's what
It did. So it was around August. Things were looking great. Pueblo County had, we were allowed to have gatherings of up to 75 people outdoors. So I got with the Crown and asked them, hey, can we come back to fighter practice with the following conditions? You know, we said no spectators, fighters only, stuff like that. The Crown spent like 72 hours. I heard back from them. They're like, no, we just don't like the way it's looking. And I was like, yes, Your Majesties. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, things started going to hell. And I wondered where Their Majesties got their Magic 8-Ball, because it's different from my Magic 8-Ball. And I ended up being glad they told us no, the way things went right after that. But when you feel like your group is doing well, ask them. And they'll consider it. They won't just pop off some answer. They'll consider it. So
okay. There's the thought then. Other ideas people can bring up are things that they're experiencing now, maintaining interests with people and so forth. Because if not, I mean, I love seeing you and talking with y'all. It's been a while.
So I have one thing.
Yes.
It seems like the obvious thing nobody's talking about, this online virtual conference, I think has worked pretty well, and keeping interest up and keep people going during this. And as we transition, I mean, we really need to be putting more effort into this. It's not very period to be talking to our Palantir Stone. You know, Lord of the Rings is banned from the SCA, but you know, it's working.
We're holding virtual ANS nights and virtual folk moots, and it's been great. We had our harvest festival via Zoom, and we're doing Euless in late December. Having this ability to see each other on the computer screen or our telephones has really helped.
And Auberon Midwinter is next week via Zoom as well.
So, well, certainly the Zoom, I mean, from my viewpoint here, Zoom does offer some definite bonuses. I mean, we can have some of these conferences, obviously, but there's also the more difficulty of, hey, I want to go and pull Catriona off here and chat to her about whatever it is I want. I want to talk bad about someone. I wouldn't want to do. I want to talk really good about someone. I want to make sure that she's wanting to agree with me in circle about it. Someone I want to bring up, and it's hard to do that over the Zoom.
So we've had active discussions in our KEL about once things are back to business as usual, we're going to continue setting up like our monthly folk moot, our business meeting.
Right.
in all likelihood is probably going to be on the online format. We will at least have a computer in the room. If we're meeting in person, we will at least have a computer in the room, because we have members up in Buena Vista, we have members in Trinidad. Driving up to Pueblo for a Wednesday night business meeting is not all that doable.
Hey,
But
you know what?
if
Getting from Buena Vista to Pueblo is faster than getting from North Glen down to Centennial. So,
Yeah, but so we have definite plans to keep this platform going, even when times do get back to normal.
So are other people probably gonna continue using Zoom for business meetings? Is that started to? Because I can see the format works well for that.
It works well for things. I mean, I don't know that we're using Zoom. I think we're using Google, but we've been doing that for Dracomore because although I believe I've had this discussion with Tigger, our Kel's spread is larger. We have a pretty distinct gap between the two major areas of population. So having it at one person's house means that this group has to travel a long, long way, vice versa. So it's been kind of handy for us to do that, to get more people to actually attend the meeting, because there are some people who can't drive up to my house and would rather us always drive to their house because they're on flat land. I get that. But once in a while, it's nice to be the people who aren't driving. So we have that opportunity with a virtual meeting. So I think we may continue that for certainly some time to come.
It's kind of something that I've talked about with people, over the past decade, how much of the populist meeting, how much do you actually need to have an in-person populist meeting anyway? A lot of things done by email. I recognize Yahoo groups are gone now and Facebook is a cesspool, but there are other email lists out there. IO groups is quite popular, and I think Kerguelen for a while was filing all reports via email. So business meeting was not about the officers reading the reports.
I think the web ministers have been working on trying to get some kind of cohesive plan, but there's a lot of opinions, and so it's still working its way around.
Okay. Other ways people see this coming, the virtual format being used more. I mean, I kind of hate to see it used too much at events, even at a learning event where it might be much more appropriate. And I know people have talked about live streaming Crown. That's still, to me, that discourages the in-person aspect, and we're a social group. So just watching it, no, we're a recreation group, and we're a social group, and I'm still of the in-person socializing, but certainly for classes, it's easier.
I think
it's a tool in our toolbox, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're gonna it'd be nice to have it as an option for accessibility for some people. If like Crown, it's unless you're a participant in Crown, you are an observer, and in some ways, then that would actually, a lot more people could actually attend maybe in that if it's live streamed.
I have to say, when I'm not physically at a Crown in person, which isn't very often, but I thoroughly enjoy watching the feed on the website. I don't know what it is, Twitter or whatever that feed is, where somebody says, so-and-so is fighting so-and-so. And then
Stags call.
Yeah, Stag's call, something like that. I am on the edge of my seat monitoring that during a Crown tournament sometimes. And I kind of enjoy that edge of my seat anticipation in that situation. So I don't know, I'm probably alone there, but I like it.
No, it's like a text role-playing game.
Yeah.
Does it
Fantasy
make it more
football.
like viewing a football game as opposed to attending a medieval recreation event? Because
In some sense, yeah.
Yeah, this platform has its utilities. I think definitely classes and business meetings where we're not trying to go for that medieval feel.
Yeah.
But when you want the immersion experience, for that moment, you want to forget phones and wristwatches and technology. Obviously, Zoom defeats that since it's based on modern technology.
Yeah.
If you can't go though, and you can sit on your couch and eat popcorn watching it, I mean, for some people, that's going to be that's going to be a positive. So
Right. It's good to have that capability when you can't attend.
Yeah.
The good thing about Stag's Call is they do their best to minimize it. They have usually a tablet or one person, and usually their phone or device is hidden within a book. So they really try and put it down as much. I do know that some kingdoms started wanting not to live stream the crown tournament or live streaming certain finals. Now, I think there might be some other legality. I've heard from other kingdoms something about streaming or doing that kind of stuff when it's live. Most of them had no issue with somebody being there with a camera to record it and then post it later, since I'm usually one of the guys that sits there and does that for the different crown tournaments in the Outlands and formerly in Kaid. And we do our best to hide it as much as we could, as opposed to having big production cameras there. But the Stag's Call, they do really try their best to keep it on the down low. And it prevents a lot of people, because in certain kingdoms where that doesn't happen, you have them texting who wins and whatnot, and it doesn't really come from a good, consistent source. By doing it the way our kingdom does it, it's really worked out, and I've seen a couple of different ways kingdoms try it.
Better to have one tablet doing the Stag's Call than 14, a dozen, who knows how many, phones being popped out to update, small subsections of the kingdom.
Well, and then also with the way the Stags Call does it, and I've been on the edge of my seat a couple times too there, Tigger. But one of the nice things we do is like getting the scores in the football game, right? So I can see that the Broncos just scored a touchdown, but I didn't get to see the 90-yard pass and the fact that it was shoelaces and jumped over 3 people to get it. So I've got the score. Oh, okay, cool, we're ahead. But I haven't gotten the feel.
And Batu also, since he does do recording, he hides his cameras really well, so well that even people stand in front of his camera and they don't even realize they're standing in front of a camera. So there are ways to do it.
That issue isn't so much the bad one, it's the conversations that you have right
Yeah.
next to the camera, and then wondering if you're going to have to mute that, or as I've talked about in different classes, if you have somebody who goes, "Ooh, that was a good hit," then anyone who sees the video immediately thinks that's what happened, even though if you've been on the field long enough, you can tell, oh no, that just hit fabric, or that was blocked by the shield. But that's one of the bigger problems we have with posting videos after a tournament, is commentary can skew what people think they see. And I think that's why some of the live streaming in certain fights, it's just politely asked, could you not post that? Usually I honor that request without a second thought, because if you happen to not be there and this person's there and they have a reason for it, sorry, you should have been there to see it in person. But I still think taking video and then posting on YouTube later, some live streaming, and trying to use Zoom for those kind of events, they're completely different tools. But Zoom for classes and even recording a lot of the different SEA classes, that's one of my passions I've been trying to get more people to do for years, because some people will teach one class a lifetime and it's hard to get that material covered again. So to me, cameras in the classroom setting, especially for some of our ANS stuff, I'll always push for that. Live streaming events, not so much. And that's just my 2 bits.
Now, I can kind of relate to that because I look at a lot of videos that Viscountess Elishava posted of the bards singing, and I have learned so much material, heard so many more songs and stories that way, because she's at events I can't get to. So the post-production, there's something to be said for that as opposed to live streaming.
So we're all making an excellent case for having video or not having video. So
Well,
we just keep it as a tool in our toolbox, right?
Yep.
Use it when we need it.
Exactly. The right tool for the right job at the right time.
Like a lot of things, I think it should all be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
I mean, all I got out of that, to me, all that sounded like was a discussion of the ethics of if we should be videoing this stuff because we're the SCA. I mean, you've all seen me at events. I've given up trying to hide my cameras. They're too big, too loud, too obvious. And I don't go up close at court, but for tournaments and other things, I've just stopped trying to hide what I'm doing because it's too hard and I live with it. And people seem happy that I'm getting pictures.
The best thing I found for that is you'll usually see me in the sunniest spot where absolutely no one wants to stand because it's too hot and too uncomfortable. And no one wants to point a camera in that direction because they'll get lens flares from the sun. And that's usually where I set up. And I agree 100% with going nowhere near the front of court unless I have little tiny GoPros that I can palm and really, really hide. But I try and stay away from the crowns and really what anyone would use as background or want to photograph. That way the camera's not as obvious. I have seen, especially with iPads and certain things, there are ways that you can hide them in plain sight. Whether you take your smartphone, put it in a fake book with just a cutout on the inside for where your camera points out. There was one person that came up with a very, very ornate staff that had a big flat plaque, and they loaded their iPad into that, and it was covered on front and back so that it was above everything. So they didn't have to worry about targeting it that much. And it was hidden 100% in plain sight, like the old stories of hiding huge cameras inside wine casks and carrying them around on your shoulder so that they blended in. So there are people that have tried it. The biggest problem I had when I got really, really good at hiding cameras, I think it was a Queen's or Princess Protectorate tournament. I had little tables with little decorative boxes on them that had GoPros hidden in them pointing at the Erics. So all I had to do was load the GoPro, press record, and it had the entire Eric in view. And people kept wanting to see what was in the box. Children wanted to play with the box. People stood in front of the box because there was no one sitting there giving context to the box. So if you're too good at hiding your cameras, they aren't always effective.
Yeah, I usually lay on my stomach on the ground, and that keeps me out of sight and keeps people away from me too. It's hard, you know, because I really everybody wants the pictures, but nobody wants to be the guy that's got the camera. I don't mind that. But I feel bad a lot of times. Like I'm sitting there and I've got this giant white piece of technology and I just feel out of place.
Well, and you're probably right. There's a lot of people who do, as you said, everybody wants it, but nobody wants to see it.
Yeah, and well, you know, contrast that with taking pictures, digital pictures in the year 2000. Royalty would come screaming at you if they saw your camera. I remember that. There were some really anti-camera people back then, and it's much better now. But still, it's a problem.
Assume that any kind of setup would, you know, be run past the organizers or the royals in attendance or anything like that. I mean, at least I think that's how they should. So,
And Adenvelt has a system designed to help the photographers in that area and the Crown. They work together, and it seems to be going really well for them.
Yeah, all of our Crown here is good. I mean, usually, like for a tournament, I'll just go to the king and say, "Can I sit at your feet to take pictures?" Because everything's going to be presented to him. And they've always said yes. So that just simplifies things for me.
Sounds like, as long as there's open communication, it's not going to even be a challenge or a problem, as long as, so it's communication is the key at that point.
So if there are, we only have a few more minutes anyway, and I know I have to be checking out at 3:45. Anything else anyone wants to bring up?
Question in the chat that is necessary about waivers for if you're going to be on film.
Yes, for the official publications, there's the photograph waivers. I'm getting feedback from somewhere. I think some of the things that Batu and Gungar are talking about are just regular postings that are unofficial.
So in my experience, and I do operate on a I have pulled down things when requested or not posted things based on request. But if it's me posting what I recorded at an event, which happens to be at a public park and is open to the public, that's one thing. If I try and post something as either a kingdom, a barony, or the SCA itself, that's a completely different thing. So when I was working on the SCA 50-year anniversary videos for the Kingdom of Kaid, I didn't personally do waivers because I was part of a team and we had somebody who investigated it, covered the waivers, knew what kind of waivers we needed, and all I was doing was taking videos of the interviews and doing the editing. They took care of all the legality side. For most tournaments, especially since it's 2 fighters in helmets, not much I don't really have too much of an issue with that. I always ask an instructor for their verbal consent before recording any kind of class. I haven't gotten to the point that I'm doing waivers on those yet. But again, I post all of that to my personal YouTube page, which is tied to me and is in no way, shape, or form tied officially or unofficially, however you want to phrase it, to the SCA. If they're going to complain, they're going to complain to me. It comes to me. It stops at me. There's no way for it to influence the higher side, and that's a liability that I take on to myself. I don't know if that's necessarily the 100% right answer, and I might eventually get a talking to. But I'm willing to accept that I'll get that talking to and deal with it how it is, even if it's my Facebook page or my YouTube page goes down. Well, that's just the game that the risk I'm willing to take. Pretty puppy.
I think Penzic has a nice solution they do with video. If you're outside of your personal camp, you by being on the site, you consent to potentially being photographed or recorded. And they got signs and waivers as part of the ticket process as well.
Now, since that did get brought up, I do want to bring up something very interesting. I'm doing everything. I'm not trying to make a penny off of any of my videos, and I tried to post every YouTube video I could to have absolutely no advertisement whatsoever on it. YouTube recently changed their terms of service so that they can post a advertisement on any video whatsoever posted on their services. So if you're watching a video that might be related to the SCA and you see an ad, please do not assume that that person is trying to make money off of those videos. That's YouTube's requirements. Unfortunately, YouTube, kind of like Facebook, is the only name in the game. It is the best, easiest way to post your videos at no cost to you. It allows you to archive your videos. It's easily searchable. It's easily savable or shareable. So a lot of people are still using it, and there isn't a competitive platform yet. but they've realized that they are the only game in town, and they're starting to change things to make things more difficult. Another thing that you might realize with their recent terms of service is you have to decide when you're uploading a video whether it is 100% family and kid friendly or not. And so if you say that it's kid friendly and it's 100% family friendly, there's some extra hoops you have to jump through. If you say it's not, you don't really have to worry about those hoops, but there's a potential that anyone who clicks on your video will be asked to confirm that they're over 18. And so I've seen there was a longsword Pell video recently that a Duke posted that flagged for you have to be over 18 to watch this video. And it was a 4-minute video of just longsword Pell work. So it's interesting things that are happening with video. And I more brought it up to where don't think everyone's trying to make $1 off of a Crown Tournament finals video. It just, YouTube might realize hundreds of people want to know who won the Outlands Crown Tournament and decide to put ads on it.
And that person's not getting a dime of it. So
That is an excellent point. Thank you. So we're at 3:45. I've got to check out for a few minutes.
Okay.
And I think there's some other things happening before the day absolutely closes. So
I'll
thank
be
you all
ending
for attending.
recording.
Thank you. It was good seeing everyone.
Good seeing everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.